What's up, everybody? Dan Casper here with you. And well, you probably know me from the Dan Casper Show, radio show that airs weekday mornings, 6A to 9A, Sports Talk 105.1 and 790 AM in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Also host of the Man Cave podcast. And now got something new, the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate podcast. So, regular listeners and followers may be thinking, hey, I thought this was a video series or something like this was a video series. Well, true, but it's a new year and we're changing it up a bit. Now it's a full on podcast plus video series. And we added the 715 on it because you know what? For as big as the 715 area code is here in the state of Wisconsin, I feel like we kind of get left out in our region of the state. All the focus is on Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay. And I get it. I mean, that's where the teams are, right? But you know what? We're just as passionate about our Packers as the next person. And depending on where your home base is in the 715, you may be close to little enemy territory or the enemy border, like myself, with Minnesota just, hour away to the west of us here in Eau Claire. So, with that, what's this podcast about? Well, we'll have weekly episodes coming out, and I'll have some friends that join me every week and some special guests that join me every week. You can either listen to the audio version of this podcast or you can check it out on the YouTube page as well. So you can watch the video version of this podcast. And the audio version of the podcast is going to be available wherever you listen to your podcast, like Apple or Spotify. All right. So just look up the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate, and you'll find it up over there. And it's just, we're fans, right? We're fans, and we want to talk ball. We want to talk shop, and it's just Packer fans talking some ball. So you know what? Let's grab a beverage every time you load up the podcast. Grab a beverage and or snack, and let's talk a little shop together here. So it's perfect timing to debut this episode, and I might as well throw this out here too because it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. For one, I'm by myself, but I'm also on Christmas vacation still right now, and my wife would probably kill me if she found out that I was doing work on vacation. But I wanted to get this out there because it is perfect timing because, well, we just had Packers versus Vikings, and unfortunately, it's not a Victory Monday episode of the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate. So with that being said, just a few thoughts on a few thoughts on the game that I had. And again, future episodes are going to be longer and such here too. But I wanted to get something out after this game because, well, we only got one more game left in the regular season, and we got the Bears coming up here. But first off, obviously, right now there's a lot of talk about the Packers unable to beat the top teams in the NFC. And well, I mean, game results literally show that, right? They've lost to Philly in week 1. They've got swept by the Lions. They've been swept by the Vikings, and that's all 5 of their losses so far this season. And for me, it just feels like this team isn't quite there yet. Now, I'm not saying they can't go on a run in the postseason because I feel like this is a team, they're very hard to predict because I feel like they got the talent to go on a run. Feel like they've got that ability to go on the run. But then there's games like we saw against Minnesota where a lot of the problems that they had during the regular season or some of their biggest issues, it kind of reared their ugly heads. Stupid turnovers, stupid penalties, drop passes. So this is a team that I feel like can go on a run. I don't, I don't know if they're quite there yet. And what I mean by quite there yet is to go into, these big games and come away with these wins. And I think especially yesterday, it showed a lot of their youth. They're the youngest team in the NFL. Yesterday's game showed, I think, their inexperience for some of those guys, because when you get into those big games, you want to see, performances from their top players, right? Like Josh Jacobs can't fumble the ball on the opening drive. Jayden Reed can't be dropping passes. Offensive line penalties, or Zach Tom struggling a little bit on a couple of pass protection sets. You need your top players to be playing at their top level in games like this. And I think a game yesterday kind of showed a little bit of their youth coming out, a little bit of their experience coming out. And, credit to Brian Flores and that Vikings defense, because they played extremely well. They put a ton of pressure on Jordan Love. They did some things Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love talked about after the game. Played more man coverage than they expected. But there's no question that the Packers shot themselves in the foot too. They made some stupid mental errors, and they didn't execute at the high level that they needed to beat one of the best teams in all of football. And this team right now kind of reminds me, even before that Vikings game, I was thinking about this a little bit. It reminds me so much of the 2009 team. There's a lot of parallels. Not saying it's exactly the same, but there's so many interesting parallels to that team. 2009, you had Dom Capers coming in. They switched from a 4-3 to a 3-4. They've drafted Clay Matthews and BJ Raji that season. They had young guys really kind of stepping up or playing crucial time on defense. You're seeing that this year too. Evan Williams, Cooper, Bullard on defense too. So you're seeing similarities in that aspect. Some of their pass catchers in 2009, Jermichael Finley was in his second year. Jordy Nelson was in his second year. James Jones was in his third year. Yes, they had Greg Jennings in his fourth year and Donald Driver over there still too. But some of their top offensive playmakers, kind of in the beginning stages of their career. And if you remember 2009, obviously that was the first year with Favre over in Minnesota. Packers got swept by the Vikings in the regular season. They finished 11-5 that year. Then they lose that playoff game to the Cardinals, and we all know what happened there in overtime with the face mask. But there's just some similarities to this team, to that 2009 team. That was Aaron Rodgers' second year, starting at quarterback too. Jordan Love's second year, starting at quarterback this year as well. So there's a lot of parallels to that, and it just kind of reminds me of that 2009 team. That was, to me at that time, they were getting there. They were close. They had a lot of talent, but just not quite there yet. Now, I think for this year, this defense is actually playing better than what the 2009 team did, because there was a lot of adjustments to, moving over to a 3-4 and such. But I don't know why. It was just before the Vikings game, I was thinking about this too. And it just really, this current Packers team reminds me so much of that 09 team. And I think too, when you look at this game, especially this game in Minnesota, it showed the injuries that the Packers had. 4 to 5 starters not playing in that game. It showed it had a major effect for the Packers, both offensively and defensively. Now, I know a lot of fans will say that's no excuse. Next man up. And I get that. I understand that. But I also feel like injuries can really hinder what you really want to do as a team. Offensively, no Christian Watson in that game had an effect. No big plays, no deep threat, no guy to take the top off the defense. Minnesota was able to play more man coverage. Not having Christian Watson on that field, not saying he would have, had 100 yards or exploded like that, but having Christian Watson on the field. And I know I don't think a lot of Packers fans realize how important Christian Watson is to this offense because of the stuff that he may not do in the stat sheet or may not show up in the stat sheets. But how valuable he is to this offense, I think, is insurmountable. And we saw a glimpse of that against Minnesota. So not having him on the offense kind of hindered it. Defensively, not having, again, Jair Alexander, Evan Williams, in the secondary there. And then Zane Anderson goes out with a concussion early in the game. Jeff Hafley is stuck shuffling his secondary around again. I mean, how many times has he had to shuffle around his secondary this year? And so when you're trying to mix and match and you're shuffling guys all around, it's going to have an effect on your team. It's going to have an effect on your offense. It's going to have an effect on your defense there. So I get it. I understand. Injuries are a part of the game. They are going to happen. But when you're missing some key players, and then you're stuck kind of, trying to rearrange or trying to maybe fit some square pegs into round holes and trying to make something stick and work, it's going to affect your game plan a little bit. And I think you saw that against Minnesota with no Christian Watson in that offensive lineup, and the secondary again having to be shuffled around against Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson and that Kevin O'Connell offense. So with a loss and Washington winning against Atlanta Sunday night, sure looks like, at least right now, the Packers are going to be the 7th seed heading into the postseason. Now, they can get up to a 6 if they beat the Bears and Mike McCarthy, if you want to help out your former team, if Dallas beats Washington in the final week, then Green Bay would move up. But right now, it sure looks like it might be Green Bay going on the road against Philadelphia in a rematch in week 1. So both these teams, I think, are completely different. If that game does happen, we'll definitely talk about that at that point in time. But this is a team that, again, I think once they get to the postseason, I feel like this is a team that can go on a run if they catch a little lightning in a bottle. I think they can go on a run. I think they can win a couple games, but I wouldn't be surprised if they end up one and done in the postseason either. So, regardless, we got one more game in the regular season to go. I think you got to go into this game. Obviously, you're going into to win it because I think you'd probably rather have like the 6th seed instead of the 7th seed here. Just in my opinion, at this point, whether they decide to rest some of the guys, I don't know. But Chicago's going to want to come into Lambeau and knock them down a peg and get a little revenge earlier in the season. And Chicago doesn't want to lose to Green Bay anymore this year either. So you're going to get Chicago's best bet. It's their final game of the regular season too. So I think you got to go in with the mindset to beat the Bears, to win the game, and then maybe get a little help from McCarthy and such. But going back to the Jair Alexander thing too, I don't. There seems to I know Matt LaFleur said in his presser that there's some swelling that he's dealing with, but he really sidestepped some questions whether there's been some disagreement between the Packers and Jair in terms of him playing and such. So it seems like a sticky situation. And I don't know what the future is going to be like with Jair going forward. Even if he is on a team, I think corner is near the top, if not number one need for this team going into the draft, going into the offseason. But there's no question if 23 was lined up on this field and he was playing these games, I think a lot of us would be feeling a lot better in terms of their defense. And I got to imagine Jeff Hafley would be a whole lot more comfortable, and he may be the happiest person on the entire team if 23 can suit up and just have him out there locking one side of the field down, and then he's allowed to do a little bit more on the defensive side. Maybe play some more man coverage, be more aggressive in those coverages and such. So I don't think we're going to see Jair against Chicago, maybe in the postseason. But if you listen to Matt LaFleur's comments from his presser on Monday, it doesn't paint a very good picture out. It just I wonder if we've seen the last of 23 now suited up in the green and gold and such. So, but hey, that's going to do it for us on this quick episode, our first episode of the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate podcast. Again, don't forget to follow and subscribe on like Apple and Spotify. If you can give us a 5-star rating and a positive review too, that way others can help find the podcast. Subscribe on the YouTube channel, and also leave me a voicemail. We got if you've been watching the video stream, the voicemail has been scrolling. The voicemail number has been scrolling on the bottom there. But you can leave me a voicemail. You can shoot me a text if you've got any Packers thoughts or questions or anything like that, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear from fans in the 715. This is a Packers podcast dedicated, representing our passionate Packers fans in the 715. So I want to hear from you, okay? I don't care what your opinion is. I don't care what your thoughts are on the team. We want to hear it from you, okay? So that number, if you're not watching on the video stream, it's in the podcast description, but I'll give it to you right now, 715-303-7364. Now, it's the same number as the Man Cave podcast, but we're going to use both for this one for right now. So again, that number, 715-303-7364. All right. Appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and we will talk to you on the next episode of the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate.